Moving from Guatemala to the United States as a young woman, Geno La Placa had no idea what the future might bring. She put herself through college, established a career in finance, and started a family over the years that followed. From the outside looking in, all was well. She completed her schooling, held a high powered job, got married, and it looked like she had it all. As so often happens in life, she experienced a loss so big that she began to ask new questions and seek to understand life on a deeper level. Tune in to learn how Heno alchemized pain into purpose and began to settle into herself and unravel long-standing patterns. Thanks for being here. Let's dive into the episode. Welcome back to Mystical Sisterhood. This is your host, Maureen Spielman. I'm here today with Geno La Placa. She is a multi-talented, multi-dimensional woman, as you know, as I was writing this intro, as we all are. And we're here to celebrate Geno and celebrate all of us who are listening, all the women out in the world. And she's really here to bring her story to Mystical Sisterhood, her wisdom, her life, her lived experiences. And Hannah, when you sent me your bio, it struck me that not only had you moved to the United States when you were 21 and established a new life here, but when you did that, it was a life based on outside metrics of success and all the things that you needed to do in order to, I guess, move through life. I won't put any other words to that right now, but how that shaped you and it, quote unquote, worked for as long as it did until you had a big loss in your life that grounded you and brought you to a place where you knew that something was up and you were being invited to look within, even if you didn't really know that consciously at the time. But then how, you went on the transformational healing and integrating journey for yourself, and then only to be hit most recently by another quote unquote setback. I always think of the words we use, but just as an outset, we're going to be talking about your life, what you've learned, how it applies to who you help and humanity. So I want to welcome you by saying thanks for being here.
Thank you, Maureen, for having me here and for having this beautiful space for women to come and share their wisdom and their journey in this life.
It's the biggest pleasure for me to be able to sit here and just ask the questions and be so excited about to my side. And so I guess I'd say, where to begin. I think it's that part of your story that captured me about when you moved to the United States. But I kind of got curious about who was that younger girl who grew up in Guatemala? What was life like? And what brought you to the United States ultimately?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I rarely talk about my prior life or growing up in Guatemala. So, Guatemala was in a civil war for 30 years, and I was born during that period, and pretty much for 16 years until the peace was signed. The interesting thing is, like, many people, even from Guatemala, didn't experience what I experienced because my dad was in the army. So I got to live that life of being the daughter of an army person during war. And I didn't even make anything of it because to me it was normal. And to tell you the truth, it wasn't until the last 6 years that I reconnected with that part. Oh, I was scared at certain things. If I'm in a road and I throw up, I thought it was like normal. Like I couldn't be in a curvy road for whatever that means. But once I went back to it and recognized what it was and where the root of it was, every time I was on the road, in a curvy road, when I was a little kid, I was going to see my dad at a base, and there was fear that if we were captured, we could have been killed. But I didn't know it at the time. There were no words for that. And it took a while to notice those little things, that there was a fear in that little girl. Yeah. But that little girl had a happy life, right? That's what once you are born into something, you don't notice the difference. It is only when we come to consciousness that we can come back and realize, oh, this is what was happening with me. So I had a big family. So that was a big part of getting to know a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
and being comfortable with people. I have an older brother and a younger sister. And one of the beautiful things that I have was that my dad was a person who always believed in me. Anything
Oh,
that I said that I would
yeah.
want to do, he believed in me. He's like, okay, go for it. You want to be a
Wow.
pilot? Be a pilot. You want to skydive? Go do it. So he would say yes, like never stop my dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, I had a family of matriarchy. My grandmother, my great grandmother, my great grandma. So it's like I met all these women who had stood for years taking care of families.
Wow.
So is this combination of the masculine and the feminine, right? Yet there was a point in my life where I was like, what am I doing? I graduated very young from high school, 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a scholarship to be a chemical engineer. After a year in it, I was like, what am I doing? This is not for me. And now that you see me, you're like, what?
Yeah. So young. Yes.
So young.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was like, maybe it's hotel management. So I moved into that. And then I was like, oh, you spend all your holidays working. This is not for me. So it's like, it took me another year. I also had a big episode that my best friend died when I was 19 in a car accident. And that
Mm-hmm.
brought a lot of grief. And at the time, I didn't know how to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think my mom knew how to handle it or anything like that. But I just kept kind of going to school and working through everything. But I came to visit my cousin here in the US and he said, what are you doing? Why don't you just go here in the US? And I was like, really? It's like, yeah. Just, I was like, but my English is not even good because at
Mm-hmm.
the time my English was terrible. And so I took a year of ESL and then applied to college, got a scholarship, ended up going. So I was a girl with a lot of hopes
Mm-hmm.
and this positivity that in a way is like you want to have that hope. The one thing though, when you keep just going with positivity and positivity, which was my detriment in my 40s, it was to recognize that it was the only thing I wanted to have.
I know. And so much of our culture is be happy, be joyful, and just these overlays of how we're just supposed to magically be there, but not recognizing all the other things that are below the surface. It fascinates me. I love it when I hear that someone had that father figure who was so supportive of where you were going. I think that matters a lot, and it's what a lot of people don't have. So there was that, and then I loved how you just like I can just when you're talking about the matriarchal line coming down. And what I was going to ask was, do you, now that you've lived in the United States for a long time, do you see cultural differences in the way that your country you came from, Guatemala, and just family structures operate within? Because I'll tell you, for a long time, a woman came and took care of my children, and she was from Guatemala. And I remember, and now I feel this way, but you'll appreciate this. She had said to me when her children were young, and she ended up having three children, Kira, I love her. She said, well, when they're older, if they go to college, I want them to come back into the home. And I was a young mother at the time, and I'm like, what? Like, and it was so obviously a cultural difference because in the US, I had grown up in a house where you left the house at 18 and then that was it. There was no expectation that you would come back. And when you hear those things in life that catch your ear and you really turn your head and say, what did you just say? That was a moment that I'll never forget because it was so different from this, autonomy, sort of hyper masculine, identity I had grown up, that you go out, you start paying your rent, and that you just don't come back. Not that you can't come back, but you don't come back. So it wasn't an option. And now I think like, oh, how beautiful. Like I want my kids to be independent, but if they need to come back here, great.
Yeah, there's a big difference. I think the family value of knowing that family comes first,
Hmm.
sometimes to the detriment, but when it's done consciously, family is so important. I grew up spending time with cousins, right? Spending time with aunts and uncles. My grandma, to me, my grandma was my safe person. If I go back now in time,
Amazing.
who was my safe person? The
Mhm.
person that I could be with and I knew was not going to reject me was my grandma. I also had an aunt that I was really, and I'm still so close to her.
Mhm.
So there are people in your life that you need as a mentor. And who are those people? And one of the things that I've noticed here is I have asked myself that question, who are my kids' safe person?
Mhm.
Because I want them to have that, because we as parents cannot always be that
Right.
safe person
Mhm. Mhm.
because
Yes.
we have our own agendas of
Yes.
what we want.
Mhm.
And then when we also parent, knowing that our kid is going to come back, in the sense of you want your kid to come back because
Yeah.
they want to see you. You don't want your kid to come back because you're forcing them and you're guilting them to come and see you, or because they feel
Yeah.
bad. And then they like, I haven't seen my parent. I've heard so many times, oh, we should go see my in-laws. Oh,
Mhm.
we should go see my parents. We really need to go see them,
Yep.
rather than, I miss them. I haven't seen them in a long time.
Yeah.
So how we raise our children, it's reflected in their future.
Mhm. Yeah, so, so true. Mhm.
And the combination of that, of what do you really want, right?
Mhm.
So this is
Mhm.
where awareness comes in parenting. Where do I want to parent from, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so beautiful, and I love the just the weaving in the different parts of our conditioned beliefs. You're using the word consciousness. When you think of that as a broad term, what does that mean to you? Is it the awareness? Is it being more awake or part of the awakening process? What is it to you?
So to me, it's funny because we all think when we make a decision, that is consciousness. That's what, oh, I made the decision consciously that I wanted to do that.
Mhm.
But in order to make that decision, we really have to be aware of all our beliefs. Where do those beliefs come from? It comes from our culture, the way we were raised, the way we survived something, everything that surrounded created that internal representation system
Yeah.
of the world. And that leads 90 to 95% of our lives. So we live mostly on the unconscious. And that consciousness is really when we looked at
Mhm.
ourselves
Mhm.
and become curious about
Mhm.
everything, like even talking to you. If I'm talking to you, the question is going, if I say yes, is that an authentic yes? And where is that yes coming from? Where
Yeah.
is that decision coming from? So to me, consciousness is more than awareness, is curiosity, being
Mhm.
able to look
Mhm.
at anything, any
Mhm.
belief that you have with compassion, and then become the observer of it.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're always in a movie, watching yourself and knowing and wanting to see, where did that come from again? In a movie, we're
Right.
trying to see, like, oh, where did that part develop?
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
So it is exactly the same with our lives. That is a consciousness in the way that I like to see it.
Yeah, I think that when we were young, we would say, like, what does that word mean? And we'd look it up in the dictionary, right? But that was only going to give us one. To this day, if you looked up the word consciousness in the dictionary, it's going to say one thing, or the Google dictionary. That's not really true of our lives. Everything includes so many different qualities and aspects. So you just named like five pieces or qualities of consciousness. And that list probably, it's like this big umbrella that encompasses so, so much. So
Yes.
I love that. Yeah.
And the word that is, I guess, trendy is mindfulness. And I was
Hmm.
thinking about it the other day and I was like, oh, this is so funny because you're mindful. And if you separate it, if your mind is full, how
Mm.
mindfulness can you be? How consciousness can you be
Hmm.
if we're being mindful?
Hmm.
Because the mind, to me, the mind is a servant to our life. Now that I can see it from different eyes, the intellect is incredible, but it's not everything.
No, let's talk about that. Because that's the way that many, many societies are cultured to think that we kind of develop our brain and we learn the science and the math and the rigorous study and on and on and on and accumulate the knowledge. But now, I mean, science is beginning to show, wait a minute, what about our heart? Is our heart as intelligent as our brain? What functions is it really up to? And is it more of a lead or a guide? And the intuitiveness in ourselves. I know that you've studied a lot about intuition, and I think a lot about redefining intelligence. And isn't that funny? Like intelligence became a word that really only included or like denoted one thing, and that was getting A's on papers and maybe making money. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when you started talking about the house you came from, yet behind the scenes you had had these different experiences, I related to that because in a way I grew up in an Irish Catholic family in northern Indiana, and I was a very Catholic community. It was where University of Notre Dame was, and so I grew up in all that. And was it totally the white picket fence? No, but yes. And so I think when we hide behind those things, or over identify, I should say, we totally ditch our whole experience. And then we come up and we get back to, oh, what was my experience? But that's an aside. I started with a question about how do you now see our brilliance or our intelligence, Heno? Is it more than just our mind?
Yes, I definitely see our intelligence more than our mind. And I think the brain is incredible. First of all, to recognize that we are a whole. This wholeness is a beautiful word, right? Because psychology focuses on the behavior of whatever we're doing, the therapy of this or that. The neuroscience are checking, your brain. How does it work? How does it function? All these different things. Your other doctors are looking at everything else. But truly, wholeness is everything.
Mhm.
And there isn't a holistic way of looking at yourself. And that intelligence comes from beyond the heart. I feel like there's something more, right? So we do have the heart. And the heart now, the Heart Math Institute, has measured it. It's like they can sense the waves of the heart 6 seconds, right? And 6 feet
Yeah.
from the heart more
Mhm.
than the brain.
Mhm.
So there's more intelligence in our heart. It's the same for our gut. So we're completely connected. And to think that, and I want to go back to our origin, even like when we are created and we are in our mother's womb, we're just being developed and our nervous system is being developed.
Mhm.
And what's happening during that time from moment of conception until we are 3 years old, we really can't say any word. But that doesn't make that we're not smart. Think about it. There
Mhm.
is intelligence. Actually, is the most intelligent moment of our brain
Yeah.
because our
Mhm.
brain has so much capacity during that
Mhm.
period to absorb as much as it can. So it's getting all that information. So if it was brain capacity, we are the most intelligent 0 to 3, right?
Mhm.
And no one would think that.
Mm.
And what's happening too at the same time? We're learning our environment. Every person that's relating to us is giving us a signal. And our nervous system is creating basically our baseline.
Yeah.
And depending on that baseline is how we're going to live our life. We're going to either decide that the world's against us or the world is with us. And then we eventually are going to start to using words. And then we're going to be developing those words to relate what we have within us. And then it comes our time for being a teenager, right? We're pruning everything we absorb and we're rejecting, rebelling, but we're trying to say something. And at the
Mhm.
end of the day, all we wanted all this time is to feel love, feel seen,
Mhm.
heard, and understood. And that's pretty much what we encounter our entire life. And then we're just repeating these patterns over
Yeah.
and over in different ways. So it gets to the point where we start to appreciate the words, the intelligence, because the world is telling us that to perform, you need to show proof.
Mhm.
We were
Yeah.
saying we need proof in order
Mhm.
to believe something.
Mhm.
So the more proof that you show me that you are capable, the more I'm going to believe you and I'm going to trust you, because we are skeptical in many ways. I think I mentioned it before. Fear is the same as faith. It requires the same thing. We believe something that does not exist.
Yeah.
So you're either living from one place that is coming from the heart, or it could be your same brain that is developing these beliefs of fear that are creating so much anxiety. So what happens when we have consciousness? We start to observe ourselves and start to observe those thoughts. And we start to notice, oh, that is not true.
Yeah.
That is actually not happening.
Right.
Oh, I said this was going to happen and it didn't happen. So there's another part of our brain, the reticular activated system, that when it believes something, it looks confirmation for it.
Yeah.
So say you're pregnant, you start to see everyone that is pregnant. You buy a new car, everyone has the same car. But in reality is you're just focused on that.
Wow.
So if you believe your neighbor is whatever, that whatever is going to keep confirming. You believe your kid is not listening to you, then every time your kid does something, you're going to prove yourself that your kid doesn't listen to you.
Yeah.
And this is where consciousness goes back. When we can observe ourselves and see that the brain functions, and it's a program. It's like a computer. How was it programmed?
I know when you were talking about like the early years from birth to 3, we're literally like computers. I mean, we're just downloading this information all the time. So, on your journey of even learning, Hanno, tell us a little bit about that. Like, I mentioned in the beginning how you were so successful. I'll use that word in your finance career, working big business. Tell us about those years and what was happening for you, and then what occurred like along that path.
So I didn't know any better as any or most 20-year-olds. I'm going to speak for myself.
Yeah.
I was clueless in the sense of what I just knew what the world had told me. And the world had told me that you had to work really hard, you had to be successful, and you had to keep going. And in that sense, my dad's believed that I could do anything, just set my mind to go for it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't care what it was. I would just do it, even if it meant I wasn't going to sleep for a test, if I wasn't going to sleep so I could have 2 jobs, I was going to stay up late answering emails, whatever it was always about the doing. Because if I worked and I kept doing, then I was going to be something.
Yeah.
I was going to be worth it and valued and loved and appreciated. And obviously it comes with gold stars, right?
Yes.
And everyone is like, wow, you
Right.
did this? And you're like, oh, I'm going to keep doing it then.
Yep.
So we go into this loop, and here is without consciousness, right? You're just doing for doing because there's a program inside of me that was telling me that that was important and that was valuable. And I became a CFO of a hedge fund. And during that period, I started noticing, my body was having certain issues. Like I had my back was hurting a lot. My shoulder was hurting a lot. I had my 3 children during that period as well.
Yeah.
And then even after that, I transitioned to consulting because I was like, if I keep working these crazy hours, I'm going to end up paying therapy for all my children.
Right.
Little did I know that it doesn't matter. You still have to work through things. And even after that, I just kept doing the same thing, doing more, volunteering, being a board for a nonprofit. You would ask me to carpool, I would do it. Have a party for 50 people, I will do it. You name it, I would do it.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
I could have done everything and it seemed seamless.
Yeah.
But nothing was telling me to stop doing it.
You had little whispers, right?
I
in your
had
body
whispers in my body.
and-
And then, one of my kids was struggling, and that was like, there were signs in there. But if you ask me, how are you doing? I'm fine. And then if you were praising, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. Okay, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
All these, again, unconscious. I had no idea what I was doing other than what I was unconsciously told to succeed and be successful. I had a marriage
Mm-hmm.
that is been amazing now, been with my husband for 20 years. So I'm like, if my marriage is good and my kids are struggling, it's probably part of it, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a big deal. If my body's not, it's because I'm getting older, right? Like you find excuses too
Would
to
you,
dismiss the signs.
yeah, and during those years, did you feel like you were being pulled in all directions, or did you just do it so well?
I just did it so well,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Mm-hmm.
would put my head on the pillow and I was out in 2 seconds.
Yes.
And then I had to wake up and do it
Mm-hmm.
again. It was that constant of doing nonstop and had these incredible ability to manage everything until and the moment it hit when my mom was diagnosed with cancer.
Mm-hmm.
It was a shocking moment for me. And I thought, okay, I can fix this. I can control this. You know, that high achieving person continue to do it that way. And got her the doctors, the treatments, let's change your diet, your juices, your
Yeah.
these, you can't eat that, do whatever. And the caretaker, I was traveling to Guatemala every other week or every 2 weeks during that process until they said, there's nothing we can do here anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
then I was like, oh, I'll find a clinical trial
Mm-hmm.
because there's going to be one. And I found one in San Diego. We flew, brought her to San Diego, did everything. And when we were there, the doctor said to me, there's nothing we can do anymore for her.
Yeah.
She probably has 3 more months.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow. And in that moment when they told me, I remember she was asking me, what are they saying? And I didn't even know how to tell her. And I knew we had to do hospice at home. And I so appreciated that my husband was ready to do that.
Yeah.
We were in San Diego, but she took an ambulance to where we live in Northern California. And during that moment is when I started to question my life.
Wow. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was the first moment where I'm like, how am I supposed to do this?
Wow. That, I mean, that's such a watershed moment of realization,
Because
revelation.
I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't fix this. And
Mm-hmm.
even in those moments, I still booked 3 tickets and 3 spots for Joe Dispenza in, Colombia in January because I had the hope that I could still bring her to something radical and save her.
Had he had that information of, let's say, Joe Dispenza kind of just recently come into your world at the time?
So it's interesting. I have read The Placebo Effect and Superhuman
Mm-hmm.
probably early on when they
Okay.
came. My
Yeah.
husband is an avid reader, so Greg
Mm-hmm.
Braden and Joe
Mm-hmm.
Dispenza is something that we had read and listened before, so it wasn't something new.
That's
But it was
interesting.
it was
Yeah.
more like, you were watching a documentary, almost like
Mm-hmm.
that. But in that moment, it was the first time I realized I can't fix everything.
Yeah.
Not everything has a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the awakening moment for me. The other moment was the day she passed. The tears came, but then I realized it was hard for me to cry,
Yeah.
even though the tears were coming. It's so unfamiliar to me to cry
Yeah.
because I had just for 40 years not allowed myself to cry.
It reminds me, Heno, you'll appreciate this, of a moment that I had at my own mom's funeral. And it sounds like their trajectories were similar. And I was in the church, and it was not well attended because the universe set it up where my dad getting the notice in the local paper, it kind of hit roadblocks. And so not a lot of people even knew that she had died. And, again, there were big communities where we grew up, and we were in the church, and I had several friends come from my town. And a friend was a few pews back and over, and she was watching me, and I was tending to my kids who were like, maybe this was 2016, so almost 10 years ago, let's say, 14, 12, and 10. And she said, I was watching you and you just kept it all together so well. And I thought to myself, well, that's an interesting comment, because she's insinuating that she would be a mess. And I can relate to what you're saying because I didn't know how to process grief at
Yeah.
all.
I didn't know how to process grief at all.
Mhm.
I was in shock. And the only one thing that I remember is when my friend, going back to the story, when he died, I remember asking myself, why?
Mhm.
Why? Why, God? Why did you take him? That was my question. And this time, the difference was I said to myself, I am not going to ask why. I trusted my intuition for the first
Mhm.
time to
Mhm.
not ask why,
Mhm.
because why is in judgment. The word why, words are so important and
Yes.
key. And I recognize that asking why to something that happens to every single girl,
Mhm.
and we just act like it's not going to happen to us or to the people who we love.
Yeah. I think those moments of that intuition, because I think when we first have those moments too, I don't know if any of the listeners can think of those moments when they first realized, okay, wait, I have intuition and that's something that I can go to and get curious about. Because I remember when you're saying you remember, I remember it was 18 months after my mom passed that I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I thought, where did this come from? And I remember turning to actually a trusted, she's been on the podcast, Valerie. I had a couple women, and Alicia and Valerie have both been on the podcast many times. And, they were my go to kind of intuitive healers. But I would reach out to them, and then it would be almost like, I'd have a fork in the road. Should I do this or should I do that? Like these big medical decisions. And then I would go sit on my back porch. I would kind of garner for them, like, what are you getting? What's here for me? And then it was summertime, and I'd go sit on my back porch and just lean into my intuition. I had no practice with leaning into my intuition. So I love that you're saying that, because it's like these beginning points as adults when we realize that, oh my gosh, there's a multidimensionality to this all, and there's more for me.
Yes. And
Hmm.
I think that's the beauty of aging, right?
Hmm.
That we finally can look at our intuition from a different place.
Yes.
We can check back with ourselves. We can check back our stories and notice. So, in hindsight, it makes sense when our intuition was there.
Hmm.
In hindsight, we can see the different times that we were saved by our intuition. Oh, if I would have taken that flight or if I would have taken that road, whatever that is, there's always that saved us and protected us. And sometimes it's our intuition. I find it fascinated when we don't believe in the power of our intuition and just noticing intuition could be like you and I were thinking about talking to each other and we both had our minds
Right.
set. And my husband, sometimes I ask him something's like, how did you know that? That's
Hmm.
literally what I was thinking. So to me, those little moments are so powerful for us to notice. But if we're not conscious in
Oh,
that
yeah.
awareness, we will never notice them. We think as
Hmm.
coincidence, oh, it could have been a statistic situation, whatever you want to call it, you'll call it that. But what surprises me is that just your phone, a simple block of raw materials, has the ability to connect to another raw material,
Yeah.
but we cannot give ourselves the credit
Yeah.
that we have life.
Hmm.
So we probably have higher powers that we don't
Yes.
see. And when I say higher powers, I just mean nothing crazy, just
Right.
the ability to connect with ourselves and have the confidence in ourselves. And sometimes we don't want to even rely on ourselves.
Mm.
And that's
Yeah.
the intuition. The inner power is our
Yeah.
intuition.
Yeah. I love that, Heno. What I see that's happening as we're even having these real time discussions about our human intelligence, that it's being mirrored on the outside. And I'm thinking about when you're saying this about, like, with your husband, what we're finding out through the telepathy tapes is that this group of non speakers has much more intelligence than they were ever given credit for. But I think what's breaking open is more and more people are doing, let's just call it the inner work, right now. And then we're having these mirrors in the outer world of all these things that are breaking open and the ways that we're understanding consciousness. So I think that that's a really cool part of it. And that's why this podcast and this kind of movement has become so important to me, because the outer world tells us something else is happening. And nowhere in any news cycle are you going to read the depth of what you're sharing today, right? And
Yes.
so, and then it's not a surprise that people love podcasts. But the other day, talking about that, I signed up for a new podcast newsletter. I'm not part of any that are from like and it had the top podcast in the US. And I swear I glanced at it, but the top at least five were from major news outlets, that they were the ones that were the top podcasts. So that tells me, like, okay, that's the collective right now. But what are these conversations that are happening in so many homes? And so I want to apply that to your life. And after, the loss of your beautiful mother, that you just, I feel like you just opened your heart, and something inside of you just woke up and it clicked. And I love the fact that for years you had those books in the background too, because I can see that they were kind of littering the bookshelves. Littering's the wrong word, but like they were filling the bookshelves. But you were like, I'm going to work, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do all the things. And those were little like whispers happening
Yes.
until that time.
Yeah. It's funny how, I mean, number one, I was the most skeptical person to anything. Meditation. I mean, you name it. For me, all this sounded woo woo.
Hmm.
All of these sounded like out of this world because I wanted proof. Because to me, proof is what kept me safe.
Hmm.
And I came from a world that I wasn't safe. So I always had to be safe. I had to be courageous and
Sure.
I had to do and I had to move.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's what kept me safe.
Hmm.
So it was a beautiful survival self for a long time. And then when I looked at my children after my mom passed, I think that is the moment because I recognized that the relationship I had with them, it wasn't what I thought it was. I only saw them for what I wanted them to be. Perfect behaved child,
Yeah.
right? But I was coming from fear. I wasn't coming from love.
Mm-hmm.
So then there were struggles, and I still wanted to fix that. I still wanted to change it. And so there wasn't any intuition, my feminine side wasn't there. I was using the same masculine qualities
Mm-hmm.
that we all have. We all have feminine and masculine, but I was using my masculine qualities that had allowed me to be successful in the business world with men and just in the world and wanting to use it at home. And
Mm-hmm.
that didn't work because there I am supposed to be a nurture mom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I am supposed to use my intuition. I am supposed to be connected to my child. So the power that we have as different humans, both men and women, it's something that we need to appreciate a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not appreciated enough. The other day, my daughter was actually listening to the monologue from Barbie, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's such a
Yeah.
powerful monologue, very impressive. And she turned around and said to me, wait, why no one is asking about the amazing qualities of being a woman?
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked. A 13-year-old telling me that, I was like, I was rooting for, it's so
Right.
challenging to be a woman, right? And she had the ability to see, like, we have an incredible power. And this is where we need to know, this is where awareness comes. Where do I use my masculine qualities? And
Mm-hmm.
where do I use my feminine qualities?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I bring this balance to the world? We
Mm-hmm.
think we want to make an impact in the world.
Yeah.
This is the
Yeah.
biggest
Mm-hmm.
idea we have. I want to change the world. I want to impact everything. The world is a mess. This is and that. The collective is in
Yep.
fear. But if we really start with us and we pass it to our children,
I
and then
believe. Yeah.
every person that they touch, it's a ripple effect.
Yes. So, so powerful. And I noticed, Heno, that I believe you called it empowered parenting. Why was that word important to you?
There are different types of parenting out there.
Mhm.
And, both of us are certified as conscious parenting coaches.
Mhm.
And what I've noticed, as I said before, words are so important. And when you're telling to someone that is coming for the first time to you that you are a conscious parenting coach, you're
Mm,
telling them that they are not conscious. And the first thing that that person is going to feel is resistance,
love
right?
that. Yes.
So, what do I want you to want? What is the energy I want you to feel with me? I want you to
Mhm.
feel empowered.
Yeah.
I want you to empower your children.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's why I use empower parenting.
That's good. I love that.
But
Mm.
it is based on conscious parenting, right? And having that ability of seeing yourself at different times and question where you're coming from in your
Mhm.
parenting world.
Mhm. Absolutely. And so much, and when you were just explaining with your daughter about her like the beautiful quality, I felt like right in this area in my chest, just this flower blooming. If we allow those beautiful qualities to come from within and just to blossom, how beautiful. And I think that's testament too to the parenting switch that you consciously by choice made in your life. And so I want to really appreciate that in you too. And I think that in something that you gave me, it's so true. You put it really well. You hear it all the time, but that idea is that when we go through our own transformation, it cannot help but energetically affect our loved ones in our sphere, whether that's your coworkers, your family, your partner, and you've seen it real time. And I have too in my house. And just to remind people that A, that there is truth to it, and B, it's on its own timeline.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's
Mm-hmm.
always in its own timeline. Whatever is required to happen will have to happen first.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a component here, and it comes back to the faith and trust, right? If we are doing inner work to heal and to be better and just to not have any issues in our life,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to take us longer because one of the beautiful things about life is acceptance. Just like death and grief,
Mm-hmm.
we act as if it doesn't exist. But when it hits us
Yeah.
so hard. And it is the same with pain and discomfort. When we are enduring that and we act like we got to get rid of it all the time, we can never go through it. So if we're living our lives like that, and then we're teaching our children that anything that is pain and discomfort is coming here to get you, you're just creating anxiety on them. But when you see pain and discomfort, like this is something we can work through it.
Yeah.
We're going to go through this in one way or another,
Mm-hmm.
right? So to me, and this is where I love my past. I appreciate everything that I have gone through because I have this trust that doesn't matter what, you always come through the other side. And this is
Mm-hmm.
how you build it with your children. If you teach them, and when we teach our kids, we teach them when we model it,
Yeah.
not when we're telling them, because they will not listen to what we say. They will notice what we model to them, right?
Absolutely.
So they
Mm-hmm.
notice that if we have a challenge and we are looking at the challenge from a place of curiosity and from acceptance and also from trusting, okay, there are some fears coming. What are these things? Are these really true? Or is it just me from what it
Mm-hmm.
was before? So I do this exercise with even homework, with tests, whatever it is. I know you're really stressed. Tell me what it is. Let's put it down. Let's take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And then going back after they go through the test and coming back. Oh, was it true what you thought?
Yeah.
So it takes a little bit of practice, but once you go 2, 3 times, now they know that this anxiety is not real because
Yeah.
it hasn't
Mm-hmm.
been proven the next 3 times. So
Mm-hmm.
you're giving them confidence. So this is why mistakes and failure, as we call them, but in reality, they're true feedback.
Yeah, online feedback all the time. A part of the corollary of the empowered parenting is relearning as adults not only to be with our own emotions, discomfort, but also relearning, I feel, how to communicate on a soul to soul level. And so, even the scenario you're describing with your children and going through like any, something like, okay, test what's coming up for you. For me, I can say it's practicing. Like, do you agree? Like, all the things that we learn in the classrooms we've been in, whether it's Susie's Soul Care or Shafali's Conscious Parenting or the countless trainings that we've collectively done, it's like, yeah, but how do you say it? How do you put it into practice? And you just start by putting one foot in front of the other and
Yes.
be willing for it not to be perfect.
Not to be
Mm-hmm.
perfect because
Mm-hmm.
there's no perfection. And this is one of
No.
the things that I tell my clients when they want something perfect. I'm like, tell me the one person that is perfect in this world. And you can never come up with that person. Yet we put that
Um,
standard up for us every day. And
mhm.
then we're like, but there's no one like that. So it's
No.
on an achievable standard. So how imperfect can you be? That
Mm.
is the perfect
Mm-hmm.
imperfect. To learn that whatever's happening to us in this moment is what it needs to transpire and happen today.
Absolutely. I love
Yeah.
that. Hannah, as we kind of circle towards the end of our time together today, is there a piece of your work or anything you want to share that's important for you to share today?
One of the things that I keep seeing is women not believing in themselves,
Hmm.
either at work, either in their relationship with the husbands,
Hmm.
or the way they're parenting. It's easier to coach one on one those things, but when you see it in the collective and those behaviors, this is a part where I do want people to learn that everyone, doesn't matter what they went through, one, that they are enough, that they're valuable and worth it, and they can believe in themselves again. So we need that awareness, believing in ourselves, and then recognizing everything that's happening within us to have a transformation. And then from that, you can make any transformation in your relationship with your children. So
Yeah.
this is where I focus, the mother-daughter relationship is one of my key things. And I just see it that it's a ripple effect. You can break the cycle. You can end this with you.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was,
Mm-hmm.
it ends with you.
And that's so, so powerful and such an invitation. Because I was going to say opportunity, and sure, it's an opportunity, but it's actually an invitation. And our generation right now, they're transforming so many ancestral patterns. And that, I was talking to a dear person in my life just yesterday saying, you are not who you're believing you are. These qualities you're putting on yourself, that's actually not who you are. And the vibrancy you feel and the goodness you feel is who you are. And so I love that the mother daughter is one of the areas of focus for you. Hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And going to your comment, not believing that the behaviors and the symptoms that are happening
Hmm.
in your life.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
forget that the essence of how we came to this
Hmm.
world, there's a
Hmm.
beautiful essence just on each person.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's covered by behaviors, emotions, and things that we have allowed to just take over ourselves, as
Yeah.
opposed to discovering what are they trying to tell us.
And that no matter the picture, the reality we think we see, that may be what it is. And it's also the perfect starting point. Yeah. So thank you for being here and sharing so much today. It feels like there could easily be a part two.
Yes.
So you share right now where to find you. I'll also put it in the show notes, but if you want to do that, please do.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram, Be Kind and Present.
And if you have not yet gone to Be Kind and Present, I absolutely love it. And I love that that's the kind of storefront because, as far as I can see, it's all just quotes and wisdom and different kind of information coming through you, yet you've chosen to put it in the form that it's in. And that is, I'm going to call it your essence.
Yeah,
It's the essence of you shining through, not Heno choosing to be forward facing on the screen. And it's just like, it's so perfect. It really is because it's done your way.
Yeah. To me,
Mm-hmm.
it's about inspiring other women,
Mm-hmm.
believe in themselves.
Yeah.
And it started even before I wanted to coach. So I just left it at that. And,
Fascinating.
normally if anyone wants to, be coached by me, I
Mm-hmm.
usually only take people by referrals.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I do protect my energy. And that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all can, like, what is the energy that I want in my life? And that comes with consciousness and
Yeah.
intentionality.
I love that.
So
So good.
thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, Heno. And to the listener, thanks for being with us. And we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mystical Sisterhood. To learn more about my one-on-one coaching programs or join the Mystical Sisterhood membership, visit maureenspielman.com or mysticalsisterhood.com. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next episode.